Good morning, everybody. We are about a minute and a half away from our rollout today. Welcome to In the Feed Zone. We're gonna get everything shared out, get everyone grouped up. We got a couple people here in Discord. We also have a couple people here in the ride here. We've got 6 or 8 riders here, 6 right now. I'm hoping to get a couple more in this last minute or two. But welcome to In the Feed Zone. I'll do my introductions here just shortly. Make sure we've got all our messages out. We're good to go. The ride pace will be 1.8 watts per kilogram today. Nice and steady recovery ride. Just to get a little bit of information in, we're going to be talking a little bit about just how to make healthy choices or how to tell the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy choice, just so that we have the information to be able to make an informed decision. That's one of the things that we like to do here. So as we get ready to roll out, we're about 30 seconds to go. Just going to check my calculations today. That'll do it. We're about ready to go at 22 seconds to go. Thanks for everybody for joining us today, and we'll get this show on the road. Let me jump down into the pen here. Riders look ready to go. Make sure, here we go, steady 1.8. Let the riders know here. 1.8. All right. Let's get this show going. Just pan out here from the helicopter view. All right. We'll go to slides. I think there we go. All right. Sure, that's what we are looking for. Just about. Where are you at? There we go. All right. Welcome to In the Feed Zone. This comes on Fridays at 5:45 in the morning Pacific, 8:45 Eastern, and 13:45 GMT. Looks like the group is getting together nicely down there in the bottom right corner. Let's get this show going. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Jason Flores. I go by JFlow here on Zwift. So if you find me on the line, give me a nice thumbs up, right on, and I will get you one back. Thanks for joining in today. We'll get this shared out to the group as I do a couple announcements, and then we'll make this ride happen. So a quick medical disclaimer is that this, the only purpose of this live stream is to educate and to inform, and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or the other qualified medical professional. This live stream is provided in the understanding that it does not constitute medical or professional advice. The goals of the live stream today are going to be to present current articles in the media on food and hydration and how it relates to endurance sports, and try to open up a dialogue to ask questions, to get advice, and for riders to talk about their experiences if they'd like to share. Today's article is is brought to us by Precision Hydration. If you've never checked out their website, definitely check them out. It's a great source of understanding how to hydrate for endurance sports, anywhere from our 1 hour jaunts on Zwift all the way up to ultra marathoning, long events and that sort of thing. So definitely check that out at precisionhydration.com. I'll post a link in the talk here at the end, as well as the article. But today we're going to be talking about how to decide whether a food is healthy or unhealthy. You feel like, hey, this is a pretty easy conversation to have. I kind of know what I'm supposed to and not to do. But what I'm going to try to do today is break it down into a 3-part or 3 kind of rule system that will allow you to give you like green light, red light. Do you feel like you're going to be doing the right thing? All right, so let me post this up. We are good to go. Welcome to everybody online, all of our viewers online. Pete, Andy, good morning, good morning. Nadia, good morning. Thanks for joining us on the live stream there. All right, so let's break it down. So how to decide whether a food is healthy or not. We're going to break it down to a couple ways. So there's going to be appearance. There's going to be taking a deeper look at the ingredient list. And then there's going to be looking at nutritional information. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit of how this applies to the drinks we drink, both on and off the bike. So we've all been at that moment where we're trying to look and make a decision of, something looking great to eat, a product on the, shelf. And we're like, is this good? Is that good? And a lot of times there's things that can influence our decision. A lot of times it has to do with hunger. So I guess the first conversation to have is making sure you're trying to make these decisions beforehand. As I work with athletes, I find that as you get athletes to think about their nutrition layout, the way they think about laying out their week for their workouts, it makes a lot more sense to them because it actually takes the thinking out of their mind of what meal is next and what they're going to be drinking or eating next, and something's made those decisions for them. So for example, in Training Peaks, you've got your Monday, Wednesday, Friday workout, you've got your rest or your zone 2 recovery workouts on Tuesday, Thursday. Let's say on the days that you work out, you have your post-workout ready, and this is what you're going to have right after those rides. The rest of the day, you're going to have like these nice salads with good protein sources, and those are already packed, ready to go. It can make a big difference when you're trying to make gains, and then it also make a big difference because you're not trying to make these decisions in your head to say, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish or to try to get to. So definitely something you can take away. So as a coach, we want people to have the information to be able to understand how to effectively make a decision, whether they're going to go one way or the other, to understand what is healthy and not. And this is a huge step for people achieving long-term improvement in their nutritional habits. So let me dial back the pace ever so slightly here. That'll do it. Just a bit more. I have a feeling All right. So let's go over a 3-step guide on how to make smart, informed decisions on whether a food or drink is okay to put in your cart or your basket, or it should be left on the shelf. All right. We'll move on to our first example. All right. So appearance. The first thing is appearance. The first question to ask yourself is, does this food look natural? Does it look like a real piece of food? Pretty simple. So a lot of nutritionists would agree that the main component of any healthy diet are minimally processed, natural, whole foods. So how do we tell if it's a whole food or if it's a food that is real or is something that we should consume? So we've talked about in other podcasts and other live streams about how whole foods should be a major part or a main part of what we're taking in, whether it be on or off the bike. So definitely using those processed foods or reserving those processed foods for a time that you need them, for example, race day and that sort of thing, or when you're testing or kind of trying to figure out what will work for you on race day, are acceptable. But on the most part, away from training, not pre or post workout, definitely whole foods has a place. So instead of putting things in distinct categories, foods should kind of be viewed kind of as a whole, processed or unprocessed. Whole foods at one end, highly processed, unnatural foods, chemically based things on the other end. So it's usually a good idea to opt for foods that look like what they're supposed to look like, as far as the whole food ends as much as possible. So now let's see, this may be pretty straightforward. Take a look at this, strawberries versus donuts. That's a pretty simple choice. Strawberries look real, but they're strawberry donuts, right? There has to be some strawberries in there, right? So definitely could be an easy choice. But let's take a look at the next one here on the right-hand side. And these are two different bars. You've got your Nutri-Grain bar and you've got your kind of more healthy labeled bar here on the right-hand side. So could be definitely tricky. Both could look pretty tasty on the shelf and could look pretty enticing, saying, hey, we're doing the right thing here. But if you look at the first bar for the first time, it's really impossible to know if one is nutritionally better than the other as far as options. So this is where we need to delve into the other steps or deeper into the conversation in order to see if we can understand how we can make a better choice. So because of manufacturers doing such a good job, you feel like you could easily make a choice, but sometimes they can't. But as a general rule, if it comes with any packaging and it says, things like paleo, low fat, this and that or the other, healthy, you need to kind of question and make sure what you're looking at, the next couple steps here as we talk, step 2 and step 3, to see if we can get a better understanding of what is actually in this product. I'm jumping really quickly over to Facebook. We've got a good amount of viewers here. Welcome everybody. Andy says, is beer healthy, right? It's just liquid bread. Yes, Andy, beer does have its place in the conversation. Definitely a high amount of carbohydrates, but you can easily switch that out. Social conversations and things like that, social interactions, there is an appropriate time, but if you can easily go back to our talk about how alcohol can affect your long-term endurance goals, that could affect and could be a reason why a rider may not be reaching their goals, but definitely a place and a time for that sort of thing. And then on the conversation of wine, it is just old fruit juice. Yes, it is, but definitely a conversation that goes with on the alcohol side as that old fruit juice, as we call it, ferments and that sort of thing. Morales Keon says, make your own bar. And yes, great idea, Morales. Easy, healthy options like getting dates or raisins as a base and adding things like nuts, and protein powder or some sort of protein from the nuts, as well as some other sources like fruit and honey could definitely easily make a bar. Or in the other conversation we've had, getting things like sticky rice and adding savory pieces like bacon and peanut butter and jam, and throwing all those in the mix can definitely be a great choice of putting something together where it's all whole foods. And you see this more and more in the Peloton. We've shown videos of what comes in these feed bags or these mussets that are passed out to the teams, and there is typically a mix of whole foods and more of the processed, rocket fuel foods that you'll find packaged up by their sponsors. Simple choice, Andy says. Simple choice. The donuts are the simple choice. Donuts are never a simple choice in our goals and endurance training, and that is true. So let's move forward. Some great conversation there. Let's keep that going on the stream, on the live stream conversation there, and I'll come back in between each of these steps. So let's move to part 2, number 2. So we're looking at an ingredients list. So this is kind of the harder part of things to kind of understand. And so what you can do is you can, a lot of times this ingredient list, as you flip it over and you start to look at the list or what's on that list, you can look to see what's good. And it can give us an initial clue of whether something is healthy or not. So this can give us some confirmation. So if you think about it, in the last example, fresh fruits, vegetables, fresh natural cuts of meats and fish and things like that actually really won't have an ingredients list. There's not a package to list that these are 100% strawberries, on a little basket of strawberries, or these are 100% apples. We can get into the minutia of, how are they grown and that sort of thing, but these choices will always be superior choices compared to those that are going to become in packages. So you just need to look at a couple guidelines. And here, I'll break it down into 4 different guidelines that we can look at here. The first guideline would be the length. Looking at the length of an ingredient list. So if the length of the ingredient list is really long, it's usually a bad sign. The shorter the ingredient list, the better, but not always. Generally speaking, this is true. So looking at our ingredient list here, it definitely has some length. We can take a look at some of the ingredients, but already difference between the bar A that we had in the example and bar B, you can see that the difference is quite drastic in how many There's what, five items in the second bar that we had in the example, and I think I counted over 20 ingredients in the first bar. And so looking at that, you already know, hey, this bar may be a lot easier to consume, a lot better for us as far as choices. The second is familiarity. That means you should be able to recognize the ingredients. So in the second bar, we're looking at dates, cashews, raisins, raspberries, and natural flavoring. So 4 out of the 5 ingredients, you know exactly what they are. You've eaten or seen them in the whole food form, and definitely can make a good decision or a good choice in our food choice. So the third part of this, as we look at the ingredients list, is we want to look at unwanted additives or artificial ingredients. They're often long and unpronounceable, and then also keep an eye out for added sugars. So anything ending in ose, like glucose, fructose, maltose, sucrose, and any syrups like corn syrup, rice syrup, malt syrup. Sometimes you'll find a list and they will list sugar multiple times in the list. And so the way this works is, and it brings us to our fourth part here, is that the order. So the order that it is listed is weighted in order of how much there is in a product. So the first one being that there's the most amount of, and then the second and the third and so on. But what you'll find is that the first or the second item may be sugar, and then as you move forward, just like in our example in bar A, and then what you'll find is as you go down the list even further, you'll actually find more syrup and more sugar in the list. So really, really be careful and thinking of these words. And again, those are words that end with OSE, like glucose, fructose, maltose, or any type of syrup, like agave nectar, coconut sugar, malt syrup, maple syrup, rice syrup, all those sort of things. These are all added sugars which could be avoided, which should be avoided largely. A lot of these are unnatural and made chemically. There are ways to do it more natural, like honey and things like that, and maple syrup. We've had conversations about how to sweeten our drinks like that, and definitely are better choices on, you know, the stream of things of what can be better for us. So the 4 things as far as an ingredient list, what we're wanting to look at, we're wanting to look at the length of the list. We're wanting to look at our familiarity with the ingredients, things we know, making sure we're avoiding unwanted additives in the ingredients list, and then looking at and understanding the order of the list as well. Okay, so looking at the bar, we've already looked at the 2 ingredients list, and definitely can see that, you know, our second bar seems to be a better option if we were going to choose out of the 2 for a regular snack. The list is much shorter, and the ingredient list contains things that we could all recognize as whole foods. In contrast to the other bar, the top bar there, it use fewer whole foods and a host of artificial ingredients as far as the ingredients that are on the list. Okay, let's see. Excellent, looking good. Again, thanks for joining online. We've got 15 viewers here right now. No extra comments there. Thanks. Good morning, Pat. I see you there online. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining in. So, yeah, a lot of these conversations are ones that you have with athletes that have goals maybe in the off season or in a mid-season break where they're trying to meet kind of a weight goal. And a lot of times it's a tough conversation because really it's tough to reach 2 strong goals at a time. For example, if someone's trying to raise their FTP to make sure that they are tip-top shape for their race, whether it be a hill climb or a criterium race, it's hard to reach those power goals if you're not fueling properly, or if you're also trying to reach, let's say your weight goal, or you're trying to drop weight at the same time. I think if it happens naturally and the weight comes off because of the secondary of the training and the fueling, then that's fine. But if you can't really push that lever really hard, so really thinking about our racing and training, you can push your different parts of your power zone. Let's say your long 20-minute power, your shorter 1-minute power, your anaerobic stuff, and think of this as one of those bars. As far as like your weight and your nutrition, you can only push so hard to make those better, and you kind of have to cycle through to be able to make it all work. You can't make all things better at the same time. It definitely can be very, very difficult. All right, so looking at our third step and moving on to our third step, we want to take a look at actual nutritional information. So I've got a couple things here. I've brought up an ingredient list again, as well as what we usually find on the back of labels, which is usually where people look at, but I would really like people to look at kind of the information that we talked about in the second part of this, but I will highlight something that's really important for this part. So all right, so looking at the nuts here, we've all had, mixed nuts. Everything looks natural. It comes it's whole food, short ingredient list. It's recognizable, so it's a whole food, no additives. So far, so good. But if you look at the amount that you consume, this is the stage 3 part of thing, is to understand the numbers. You're looking at the back of the packaging. You want to kind of look at the total calorie, total fat, sugar, salt, all that stuff you can understand. And the take-home part of this is on the back of the packaging, we can find the full nutritional information. I brought up one example. This is a UK-based nutrition label. We have more simpler ones, I would call it, here in the US, just because we would actually hope to have this red light, green light, but we don't have it yet, and they're making changes. But this is a good example of kind of how to understand this. So when we look at the nutritional information here on the left, you want to check the corresponding serving size. So this is a trick that manufacturers play, where on the back they will report low numbers of everything, typically across the board, fat, calories, everything, but the serving size is tiny. It may not be even an amount that someone would normally eat. So we're looking at they are explaining kind of what is it, an eighth of the bag of nuts, which is per 100 grams, and it's a small amount. You're talking maybe just a handful of nuts from this package, consuming this amount. So let's say you ate half of the bag, or even the whole bag. You're looking at that number multiplied by 8. And so really just need to kind of look at those numbers. A lot of times they use that to lure people in in order to kind of like, oh, this is like a low calorie, it's a good snack in between my meals. But the take home point here is to look at the label, to understand the serving size, and to kind of multiply those numbers by what we feel or what we would see ourselves consuming. So in the case of the nuts, the serving size is pretty small at 25 grams, or 1/8 of the whole bag. So if you ended up eating the whole bag, doing the calculations, the number that they write up as far as calories at 679 or so, you're looking at over 1,000 calories from eating the whole bag. And if your calorie allotment was 2,000 or 3,000 calories per day, that's a pretty hefty amount of your divvy up. As this was just even a snack, it wasn't even a full meal. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever really eat foods that are high in calories or fat or sugar, but it's actually rather you should look at foods, if they look good after step 2, just look to see if the portion size, and understand kind of what those say about the things that we're trying to eat, and how much we should be eating of those items. Okay, and so jumping back into the live stream, Pat goes, nope, only one thing at a time. You can't do it. Yeah, Pat's got a really interesting story, and he's probably okay with sharing it, but he's done a really great job at splitting this. He had a really big race. It was a week, I think it was a week ago. It was a huge mountain climb here. Out here in Northern California, did an amazing job, hit a lot of his goal times, and really left it all out there. But he really had to split his time to reach those goals, and his power goals and his weight goals. So he really split it and did a really good job. So I'm really proud of him. But a good example of it's really hard to kind of burn the candle at both ends. Ryan Kettleston here, he's just jumped out of Discord, but is there a simple energy drink? He uses a Zip Fizz, and I see the ingredients list is not as good as I thought. Yeah, Ryan, definitely. Looking at a couple of the articles that we have brought in the past, or even some of the ingredient lists, or kind of ways we put together our own drinks here in the Feedzone, or have recommended, could be very useful. There's 2 brands that we kind of look at in the whole food approach, one being Scratch Labs, the second being Osmo, both coming from previous, they were nutritional consultants for pro teams on the domestic and the world tour side. So I know a little bit more about Alan Lim from Scratch Labs than I do of Stacy Sims from Osmo, but both using real whole foods to sweeten their drinks, as well as using a decreased percentage of carbohydrates in their drinks, which scientifically has been found to allow better hydration. So I guess simply talking about a drink that you could make actually at home, you could actually make a 4 to 6% carbohydrate solution easily with either honey. I typically prefer a real whole food like maple syrup. Works very, very well, and you could easily get a 4 to 6% hydration solution there. You could add the electrolytes that you need via salt, and easily as much as a pinch in a bottle, and 2 tablespoons or a tablespoon and a half of maple syrup will get you your taste that you need. The other way to do it would be to try some of those two manufacturers that I talked about, and you'll be surprised when you turn over the label for Scratch, and then you know, it's lemon and lime flavored, and there's actual lemon and limes in their drink, versus something that assimilates something from a chemistry lab experiment. So as far as hydration, we definitely have good talks on In the Feed Zone, and we could revisit some of those. I know there's a lot of conversation about that on what we can make on our own, but definitely something you could try at home. And so those two are good to look at. And that's a good segue to our last part, or our fourth part, which is looking at the same 3-step guide for when we look at our drinks and our food. Our drinks, both on and off the bike. Of course, the exceptions are our typical exceptions are only alcoholic drinks, which don't tend to have a really long ingredient list or nutritional information displayed on the back. So this, you'll have to look up specific brands online and that sort of thing. So just looking at your drinks and kind of looking the same 3-step process of appearance, ingredient list, and nutritional information is something that we can take home and be able to use to make same decisions. A lot of times this goes for off the bike, but on the bike, the simpler that you can consume, even if it's just water and some electrolytes, which again, we've had a conversation here on In the Feed Zone about how drinking water alone may not be your best bet, and adding some electrolytes could make a difference. Definitely go back and watch those. Could be useful. So keeping it simpler, getting what you need in, and not having to have, you know, rocket fuel in the bottle every single time you jump on the bike or are training, because it as we've talked about before, if you're not on the bike longer than really, you know, 90 minutes, you're not really shouldn't or really need any nutrition and or hydration more than just water, and post workout fueling after that. If you're doing just a 60-minute session, you should have everything on board, or we should be striving to be able to perform in a 60-minute or what we call the 42-minute rush on Zwift. As far as laps and races, you should be able to perform without a gel or without fueling. So really good talk today. Again, we talked about how to decide whether or not a food is healthy or not, or just to kind of open your eyes, open our minds to those sort of things. We want to look at, again, appearance, our ingredient list, the nutritional information, and making sure that we also apply these to the drinks both on and off the bike. So for those that you're interested, this article came from Precision Hydration. You can check the original article out at Precision Hydration-blogs. I will post a link here right after this into the conversation so that people can jump into that article completely. They've got really good information about hydration in particular. Check out all of the old In the Feed Zones, specifically about hydration we talked about, and fueling. Really good talks about that, and some great questions here today on the live stream. I really appreciate that. And so with that to go, we've got 2 minutes in the group right here. We'll roll out and finish this up. But thanks for joining us everybody. And I will see everybody next week in the Feed Zone.